Hi, welcome everybody. We are doing yet another episode of Pages Promotions, the 2020 Summer Virtual Book Festival. We're doing this on Facebook and on YouTube. We're just hanging out, talking to authors and readers, and just trying to bridge the gap here because we can't do any physical book festivals this summer. So we're trying to do something a little different, but still stay connected. Today, our featured author is Xander Cross. Wave, say hi, Xander.
Hey.
There he is. This is his book, The Origin of the White Wind, which is really cool. And I really love the art on this book. It's very, very nifty. You must be the origin himself, right, Xander?
No, I wish. I would kill to be Hayate. Hayate is like the best. He is. Oh, I can give you like there's the series. I have the pitch for the series, and there's the pitch for the book.
I was going to ask you to do all that, so you just jump right in and go ahead.
So the Atlas Dystopia Apocalyptica is an overall series about the life and times, and written as a memoir by a lusty, evil demon, antihero, and his adventures through starting 100 years from now in dystopia and going through to the apocalypse.
Wow.
And,
okay.
The first book is the origin of how he actually came to our world and how he turns into a demon. And this book kind of covers the transformation arc of how he accepts and deals with having been a former angelic being and turns into a demon and has to live with this.
Wow, what a cool idea, going from, hey, Nancy's here. Wow. But that's a really, really cool thing. It's pretty unusual for people to write an anti-hero as a main character. What drove you to want to write that story?
That's actually a really multi-layered question.
That's okay. I will be happy to take a multi-layered answer.
Okay. Originally, like back in 2004, I had a few apocalyptic dreams thanks to Charles DeLint's Spaha. I don't know if anyone's ever read that or heard of Charles DeLint. He does a lot of urban fantasy. He did an apocalyptic fantasy. It gave me nightmares. And
cool.
One of the images that came out of that was this concept of a kitsune character who was going to be running around in that world. And then I worked on my trunked trilogy, which is trunked because it's too long. And I realized I can't do a kitsune character. That's horrible because I have a fox, even though it's a Gaelic, I have a fox character. I can't go and do that. And then I saw this anime still. It gave me, it turned the fox white, and I could do it again. So I just went all the way into it. And because I kind of saw that still right after the 2016 election, I'm a historian, and I saw what the writing on the wall of what a lot of what's going to happen, and a lot of it has come to pass, unfortunately, including plague. Then I was like, this just fired my imagination, and I ended up having to do it. As for the demon, the fact that he's a demon, I got really inspired by the anime still that I saw it from, which was Kami-sama Kiss. It's called Kami-sama Hajime Mashita over in Japan. And that character is an anti-hero, is a kitsune anti-hero, and I loved that. I felt like there was a deeper, darker, underbite story right there. That's like, George R. R. Martin level dark. And I wanted to go there with it, and the story never did. So it just all kind of swirled together into this thing, and then this character kind of presented himself, and I kind of asked myself during that Christmas, it's like, well, 2016, if I got to be this character and live in this future world, what would I do? What would happen? I see what's coming down our pike. What would my life be like? And then this sort of formed all out of that.
That's very, very cool. What drew you to Japanese storytelling as opposed to American storytelling? I mean, what is it about the Japanese culture that hooks you?
I have been hooked on the Japanese culture since I was 8 years old and saw Shogun for the first time.
Wow, that's really young to be seeing Shogun.
In my household, we had like we had all kinds of things I should not have been looking and seeing. As soon as they taught me the alphabet, I knew how to read. As soon as I could put the sounds to those letters, I knew how to read. And a lot of things my parents had around the house, they didn't think I could read, like Lynn Abbey books, Conan, and all these like sci-fi fantasy books with buff heroes on the covers and really chiseled women and stuff like that. I remember looking at Edgar Rice Burroughs' The Moon Maid and looking at that cover for hours and hours. So it's just, and then you add that with Japanese, then I got into anime, and it kind of just sort of, I don't know, this story has to be, it starts in Japan. It doesn't stay there. The first 4 books will be in Japan.
Okay.
And it takes place starting 100 years from now, so.
That gives you a lot of world building to do. How did you attack that problem?
For me, that was like the easiest part. It just evolves for me, especially from a historical point of view of how this world would be. So when we talk about the future of this world is full of megapolises, which we have now, like Tokyo is a megapolis. So this is a Tokyo 100 years from now, after a huge earthquake takes it down in 2068. And when they rebuild it, after all these plagues, they start rebuilding it from a xenophobic point of view. And so some of this is my way of looking at the world and trying to saying, hey, if we don't wise up, this is where we're headed. So the oceans are completely destroyed. They are acidified. They are radioactive. The Pacific's radioactive from the Fukushima disaster. We're still dumping tons of waste out there into that water. It's now starting to hit Oregon. The ocean's not going to just make the radiation and all this plastic disappear. So the Pacific is dead in this future. It's green from space because it's all algae covered. Nothing can eat it. There's no movement in the ocean. Nothing. There's no ecosystem left.
Wow. Okay.
So, this is the worst case sernero of where we are headed. There are still racial problems. The megapolises themselves are arranged xenophobically. So they're in Tokyo. There is a Korean sector, there's a Chinese sector, there's a Western sector because it conglomerate everyone from the West into that. And meanwhile, in the great shining inner city, that's where all the rich people live. And they have it really nice. And of course, the Japanese citizens have it a bit nicer than the Chinese citizens, who have it better than the Korean citizens. So I keep all of that racial tension in there for them.
Okay. Wow. It sounds like a lot of work. I mean, it's probably fun for you because that's where your head lives. World building for me has always been a challenge. Character building has always been much easier for me than world building. So kudos to you for doing that. I really respect all the work that you put in the behind the scenes stuff to bring a story like this to life. Does anybody else have any questions at this stage for Xander? Go ahead, Angela. Yeah.
Hi. Hey, Xander, it's fascinating, and I've not done any world building, but how do you go about, what's your process for that? Like note card, do you draw it, or?
Believe it or not, I have right now 512 song playlist on YouTube. And this is where my plotter comes in, because I'm a plantser. I'm a digital plantser. And what that means is about 520 videos, or about, I think it's actually 512 now, videos are on YouTube as a public playlist, and you can see my entire 20-book series from beginning to end, played out in all this epic music. It is divided by eras, and there's certain music that goes to that era, and I will just run around my downstairs in the dining room area, and I will listen to this music, and sometimes I'll find a piece of music, or it'll come up, and I listen to it. It completely creates the scene I need, and other times I have to hunt for the music, and then it just blows out this scene into something really epic, because I see it kind of like how Netflix does anime. So that's kind of how it looks in my head. The world building part of it, it just flows for me. I had to actually cut some of it out when I called the first book, because it was originally 141 words and 1,000 words, and I had to call it to 115 to get the whole war in there for the first book. Because for the first, with this character, he goes through different places in the world. So as I wanted to be able to show what's going to happen to our world. And
that's pretty intense that you put so much detail into a first book. I'm assuming I kind of peeked and I read, because I was really interested about the glossary at the back, so we'll talk about that in a second. But the last paragraph of your book alludes to a sequel. Is that something that's forthcoming that we should be looking for in the near future, or is that still like more than a year off?
The Dragon game is going to come out this autumn, probably late November.
Perfect.
It is being beta read. In fact, most of the beta readers have already read it, and Iris read it. Iris read read it. She's read both of them actually, and she read Dragon Game and actually helped find some mistakes. Thankfully,
good.
She's been wonderful.
That's a great function of beta readers. So we appreciate your help and support. Indie authors can't survive without beta readers, so it's fabulous that you're willing to do that. Thank you. So in autumn, like November, it's going to be coming out. And it takes
place a year after this. It takes place about a year after this because the main character, when he comes to New Tokyo, discovers that dragons, Asian dragons, rule all of these megacities, and they have yokai. That's what they call demons and fairy creatures over there. Yokai is one of the names. And as a demon, he falls under the dragon's law, which means he is going to end up in a menagerie, and that's going to put him as top tier of the Yakuza. And that's what he ends up becoming. He becomes an assassin, and what we find out in book 19 is that he is a villain. And for the first 4 books, everything he's done he's going to find out he's been vilified, horribly vilified. And when we see it from his point of view, we know that the dragons aren't nice people. They're not good. They're power hungry. They're greedy. The only purpose they really have is in keeping the creatures on the other side of the shadow veil over there. And otherwise, because there are dark lords on the other side of the shadows, demons can go through shadows. And because of that, he has these cool powers. So he's loaded with all this fun.
So I heard you mention there are 19 books?
20.
20 books.
And each one is a different genre, slightly from the other.
Okay, wait a second. Let's talk about that for a second, because I'm one of those wacky people. I have a goal to write one book in each of the 35 major genres that the industry's identified. How are you writing in different genres? Are you writing subgenres all under the Japanese anime style genre? And then you're writing subgenres under that? Or are you actually writing definitive different genres?
So, the first book is the transformational arc of this creature having gone from being a very sweet, benevolent, loving creature to having to deal with, oh, now I'm a demon, now I have lust, now I have anger and rage, and I have all these emotions and things happening, and I still want to self-determine and be who I am and not be what everyone else tells me a demon is supposed to be. Right. So we have that. The second book is a murder mystery. The third book is we go by Saves the Cat. It's an institutional where he becomes more and more drawn into it. The fourth book is a dude with a problem. The fifth book begins to allude into the paranormal romance that will be number 6, and so forth and so forth. It's his life. It's basically all. And he's a twister. He twists and turns on you.
Okay, so it's not so much that you're writing in different genres, you're switching up themes within the same genre. You're still writing the base of your world, and the base of your story is still Japanese culture, anime, futuristic, but you've got all these themes that are switching up within that overall genre arc, correct? Am I understanding that right?
Because by book 5 we leave Japan and we go into what North America has become, which isn't good. We've lost our infrastructure. It's horrible here. So
you're leaving the anime Japanese culture genre behind, and you're actually going to step into some of the other genre cultures like Western or
we get there.
Thriller, mystery, or romance, but outside of that Japanese cultural environment, correct?
Yes, and for the first
Okay.
10 books, we're in dystopia, and for the last 10 books, we will be into the apocalypse.
That's amazing. Okay.
So, and it will go, and we have a Mad Max stage, and we have a stage
Okay.
where people are starting to rebuild, and then, and plastic becomes people are digging plastic out of the ground. That's the economy. You know, the character himself says, if I would have known that plastic was going to be so dear, I would have saved that and not gold and silver when I knew the apocalypse was coming, because people can use it and they can hold it and they can make stuff out of it, and it doesn't die. So people are going to start digging this out of the ground and have carabineers that are going to take it from these dump sites and sell them to towns and so forth and on until we go pretty far. I go for 3,000 years into the future.
It sounds so I get that you're a planter, part potter, plotter, part pantser. I would guess for 20 books you would have to at least do a rough sketch outline plot, right? Because you've already got 20 books planned.
Yeah, it's musical. So, it's all on YouTube. You can actually go from beginning of that playlist to the end, and that it will all go in order, and it will show. It's like just being told in music. It's the outlines just in music. And as soon as I hear any song on that outline, you know, I know exactly where we're at. I know exactly the scene that goes to and everything.
Okay, that's kind of a really cool way. I've never heard of anybody who works that way before. So that, I mean, most of us work with music, or some of us at least work with music in the background. I like to listen to classical music or Gregorian chant when I write. Other people need constant silence. I think it's interesting that music is actually what's driving your storyline. That's kind of cool.
And there's a lot of epic trailer music. I mean, it's just fantastic, fantastic music. And it all has to be by era. And certain characters, like when he has a demonic form called Shiroya Windo. And that demonic form even has its own sound. I have to have like underpinnings and stuff with like, you know, fast strings that goes da 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 to get the feeling and sound and feeling of this demon. Because it is a demon of wind and fire and lust.
Kate is with us. Unfortunately, she's incognito because she's trying to multitask today. But she did send me a question in text. She said, what is your favorite source for research?
I love Matthew Meyer's yokai books. They are fantastic. Yeah, he has done encyclopedias and done his own paintings of yokai. And he is my first and foremost. Like he has a beautiful website for it too. But I have 3 of his books actually in print that I can go to as my resources for trying to look up different kinds of yokai, because I want them to fill this world when we come to that first 4 Japanese books. But we don't just, like I said, we don't just stay there. Like in book 2, we have some Korean ones that come in and stuff like that. I like to change it up. I love folklore from all over the world. So
how do you research? How do you research that folklore from other cultures? I mean, is that digital research you do, or do you travel? How do you go about getting those resource materials?
Most of it's online. Thank goodness for the web.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for it. I don't know how I could actually do this if it wasn't for being able to do it digitally. Even the way I write, I'd have to do it digitally, because I'll type out a stream and I'll look down, and then like 3 paragraphs in, I'm like, this sentence goes up here, and then I will copy and paste and I'll put that sentence up there and move things around. And yeah, I would go nuts analog.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Xander right now? I don't want to dominate the room, so if anybody else has any questions or comments. Anybody? No? Okay, so let me ask you this. You have a glossary of terms in the back of the book.
Yes,
I was looking at this. I love when authors include stuff like this so that we can get a more in-depth kind of snapshot into the world that you're creating, especially when it's a multi-volume series. So this is a glossary of Japanese terms, and they're written out phonetically, which is great for those of us who need pronunciation help. Is this glossary in here a result of research, or are you also fluent in Japanese?
Research. I wish I could learn Japanese. I wish I could. My biggest deterrent is I don't have anyone to speak it with. I have books on how to learn, but without anyone to be able to have conversations with every day, it just doesn't stick. So most of what I know is stuff that I picked up from anime, like Baka.
Okay.
And EA.
That
on
makes
all.
that makes good sense.
But thanks to anime,
Um,
I actually know how to pronounce a lot of things too.
Yeah, well, phonetic pronunciations in Japanese English dictionaries would probably help a great deal. One of my editors is studying Japanese, and he runs into the same problem. He's going to Michigan State, and unless he's around the people that he's learning with, there's nobody to practice on. No, I ran into the same problem with American Sign Language. So I taught my son sign language when he was little, just so I could keep my skills up. But as I've grown older and there are fewer people to talk ASL with, it's harder to stay current. You know, I think that's true for any language.
My background mostly is Latin, which is where I learned how to write, in my opinion. I had 4 years of it, so that's what got me my grammar.
Okay.
And it's
Where did you pick up Latin from?
From university. I had 4 years of university Latin in classical Silver Age and the final vulgar stage of it, they call Church Latin. So we got to do all
so
of
when
that.
you say you learned how to read and write using Latin, it's not
Right.
because you were taught it as a child.
No, I wasn't taught it as a child. I
Okay.
mean, that Latin is what got my grammar to where it is now, because you have
Got
to learn all of your grammar to be able to
Yes.
translate Latin.
Yep.
So,
I have an author friend who teaches Latin to 7th, 8th graders. So yeah. Talk about, you said you have a history background. How does your study of history influence your writing?
huge. It's like, for what I'm doing with this series, it is forward speculation and knowing how different cultures, I mean, the human experience is the human experience, and it doesn't matter what culture we're in. You'll see it time and again, like just the way that, civilizations build, rise, peak, fall. We're in the middle of it right now. We're watching our civilization peak and begin to fall. And that's why we're seeing so much unrest that we are seeing. And out of that usually comes new civilizations and new things. And sometimes it comes with a complete breakdown if there are enough natural disaster events afterwards. So there's that. In my Trunk trilogy, which I don't talk a lot about because I still have to call it, it's like hugely, it's like I've got over 1 million words for it, for 3 books. It's crazy. So it has got to be called. But for that, history just plays so much, because it gives you the psychology, it gives you the understanding of how people move, why they move the way they move, what they are going to do with each other,
Absolutely.
How people are ugly with each other, even, because we are very, 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 humans are very discriminating creatures. We have to be, in a way, because we're taught that, not just because we're taught that way, but because we have to get in a lot of information and keep moving very quickly. So we have to judge and move. And then we get to points where we're at now, where we realize we overjudge. We don't take really everything that we could take and see it, you know what I mean? We just...
No, I get it.
We over-discriminate. And then we get into trouble.
Well, and we're a cyclical species, so unfortunately, we learn very slowly. So,
and stuff that happened to like the Anasazi and the Cahokians in the middle of like Native America, we're seeing that now. How civilizations will try to become more conservative the more they try to hold on to what was, as they're slipping more and more away.
Sure.
So you'll see that a lot.
So Kate has another question. She said, it sounds like that you're interested, or at least open to, writing in a lot of different subgenres. So she says, which one are you interested in writing that might surprise people? Which genre or subgenre do you think is going to be most surprising when you get around to writing it?
I would say the paranormal romance, but then anyone who's read Come By Night, my paranormal novella romance, knows that I can already do that. So
why would it be surprising for people to see you write paranormal romance? What is odd about your take on that style?
Because when it comes to this series, it is, even though I have a lot of humor, it is dark. So to get from this point where this character is very dark and very much a Lothario, he seduces in order to suck the life force out of people. He is definitely a dangerous critter. And then to watch him soften and fall in love is just mind-blowing.
Okay, awesome. You said that you have a whole bunch of other writings that are available elsewhere, a lot of it for free. Can you tell us about that? How people can find your other work?
Okay, on
And
Wattpad.
until November, when the next book comes out?
Yeah, well, on Wattpad, what happened is last year I started writing a little spin-off series called Come By Night, which was kind of an accident. It's something that, I was talking to a friend and we were like, kind of like BSing about it. And I'm like, we're talking about a role play we would do, possibly, or some kind of crossover between our characters. And I just got so inspired that I did this. And then I had to make it relate to this whole Atlas Dystopia Apocalyptica. So there's a bit character in Origin of the White Wind who meets Hayate and then eventually ends up having a relationship with him. She stalks him. She manages to have a love affair with him, and then she writes Come By Night as her release because she can't really have him or keep him. So she kind of writes it about him, but it's not really, she comes up with a different name, she comes up with different characters, she sets it in pre-modern Japan. So I'm writing for her, this set, and these are the kind of books that when a woman's like reading this in a lunchroom, she's like, another woman comes in, she quickly turns it off and tries to hide it, but the other one smiles and goes, hey, are you up to this part yet? Because it's guilty pleasure. It is just pure guilty pleasure, fun. It's trope. It's absolute trope, but it's fun trope. And
where can people find it on Wattpad?
You can find it under Ayakashi_Fox. You can DM me for it if you'd like. I have I have links available to it, and I have the first 2 out, and the third is going to be on Instagram, because I've actually put these on Instagram as little short serials. I drive people insane. I will only put up like a quarter of a chapter a month. Just a little bit of a chapter
just
a night.
one paragraph.
I'll do about like just a few, and I will cliffhanger it horribly. I love cliffhangering. I love cliffhangering my chapters. I love cliffhangering my books. I just love it. And so the third one I'm going to start writing for July NaNoWriMo.
Great.
And that should be about 15 to 20K novella, and then that will be posted up, and hoping next February to release those all together as one book that will be like that Come By Night trilogy with the characters of Hodoro and Isamu, which are the lovers.
Extraordinary. That's great. Anybody else have any questions? I know Kate has one in chat, but I want to give everyone an opportunity. Anyone have any other questions? No? Okay, we'll run to Kate's question then. She wants to know, do you write in a variety of formats as well, such as poetry or any other kinds of formats? Like, do you use poetry? Do you, as a Japanese fiction, do you use, oh, sorry, that was Angela. Sorry about that, Angela. So this question's from Angela. Do you write poetry, or do you write in perhaps haiku, given the nature of the Japanese background, or do you only just write fiction prose?
I mostly write fiction prose. I have written poetry. I have to be inspired. I have to really come from, and I usually have to be really depressed. I have to be emo as hell. But you get me there. You get me there into that, like, really deep place, and I can just, I can do it. I actually have a poem that will be featured in the fourth book of the series that I will put. That's actually lyrics that I wrote to somebody's piece of music that moved me so much that lyrics came to my head.
Okay. Some of us in this wacky world, we talk to our characters, we argue with our characters, we create worlds, but also, I don't know about everybody else, but I find personal journaling to be helpful in my fiction writing process. Do you journal at all, or do you have another, aside from music, do you have another ancillary creative outlet that helps you write your prose?
Not exactly. I don't even know exactly how I come up with this. I can write, when I get in the middle of a creative fix, I can envision 5 different alternate universes for the same event taking place at one time. It's like the only thing I am smart at. I am stupid about everything else in my life, but when it comes to creating characters and creating worlds, that is just where I'm at. That is where my brain has been since I was 6 years old. And I just can, it's the only place I have any form of weird, wacky genius. Otherwise, I am as mundane as it gets.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Xander? Okay, I have one last major question, then we're going to talk about the discount offer that you're offering for the book festival. And that last question would be the question of a pseudonym. At this point, in the very brief time that I've been acquainted with you, I now know you as two different names, and I still don't know if either one of those names are your real one. And you don't have to divulge that, but I'm just curious about what brought you to make a decision about having pseudonyms, and why you would choose a pseudonym over your real name, if that's indeed what you've done as the author of this book.
Partly. Xander is part of my name. So my name is actually Alexander, and Xander, that part, Xander Cross, that's, Cross is my last name.
Got it.
Ayakashi Fox is the character that I have created for the cosplay, which I'm partially in now. And, which, by the way, this is for Iris, by the way.
Ears. I was going to ask you about the ears, if you were going to put the ears on. You should put the ears on.
This is for Iris.
You see, there you go, ears. I was looking for the ears.
Yeah, I made these. I have nobody else to go to, so I made my own ears and tail, which I don't have my tail out here. It's too hot. But yeah,
That's very cool.
I have ears. I made those myself.
So let's talk a little bit more about the pseudonym.
So
What
Ayakashi Fox
would drive you to use a pseudonym?
Well, Ayakashi Fox is something I came up with as a Google Plus handle back when there was Google Plus. And then I wanted something that said Fox Yokai or Yokai Fox to go with that, and everything was taken. But Ayakashi Fox rolled off the tongue. Ayakashi means, it's a word for yokai, or it's now kind of means like one that's more associated with water, but it was an older term for yokai, like Mononoke and such. There's a whole bunch of names for these creatures, and they go all the way back. So they've been evolving throughout time. They seem to resurge actually after a huge problem, like they've resurged after World War II. They resurged after the Tokugawa period. They surged up after the Meiji Restoration. So they always seem to come out. And Ghibli Studios just really made them huge. So we're on this huge yokai wave right now. And I just really want to be a part of that. And Ayakashi became part of, I use that name. So that's just the cosplay sort of, stage name, Ayakashi Fox. For my stuff, I call it Ayakashi Fox Studios. And there's that. That's not really so much a pseudonym, though, as much as it's a stage name. Xander Cross is calling myself Xander because that's just how I go by. I don't go by Alexander. I go by Xander. So that just is. So it's a pseudonym, but it's not.
I understand. Okay. It's one of those questions that comes up in our circles quite a bit. Some of us use pseudonyms and some of us don't. The idea for me of using a pseudonym would make me crazy because I would never sign the right name. I would never answer to the right name. It would just confuse me way too much.
I have that problem. I've had problems where I've almost put Alexander and almost written that out instead of Xander Cross in a book and ruined my own books because I didn't write the right name first. I've done that. That's horrible.
This is why I'm using my real name when I write, because I'll just mess it up.
So what I do is before I sign a copy, I will practice it 3 or 4 times before I actually do the signing.
Yep, that's probably a good idea. So this again is your book, The Origin, there we go, Origin of the White Wind. And can you tell us about the discount that you have running for this month for our book festival?
Yeah, it's normally $14.99, but if you contact me via DM, either on Facebook, you can contact me on DM via Twitter or Instagram too. I'm all over the place. Those are the easiest ways to contact me. I need to get my butt in gear and get a website up. I really do.
Okay. I
have been procrastinating because I don't know how to do any of that, so I'm pushing it off. But for the rest of this month, it'll be $12 plus shipping and handling if you come to me, and you get a signed copy about $3 cheaper.
Awesome. Very cool. And for those who are madly in love with their Prime accounts, you are available on Amazon, yes?
Yes.
Excellent. Any more questions for people from the room? Any other questions, Diana, Angela, anybody? Okay.
We never know what to ask when you're asking that. We're like, what do I ask? I always feel like a deer in headlights. I'm like, is the sky blue? What's that about? I'm horrible. I'm horrible on this.
The questions I come up with are partly because of my own personal intrigue as an author. I want to see how other people work and what their processes are. Part of it is I worked as a reporter at a newspaper for several years, so I have that questioning thing in the back of my head all the time.
You do.
So,
You're smooth. You're just like, you just roll that out.
it's training. Training. All right, then I guess we're going to wrap it up for this afternoon then. Xander, I really appreciate you taking time out of the middle of your day to join us and talk with us and share with us your work. And we're definitely going to be looking for your new book coming out around November. Please post to the page when it comes out. I'm going to be leaving the Facebook Virtual Book Festival page up so that we can all stay in touch and share with each other stuff that's going to be going on throughout the year. So feel free to put that up there when the book comes out. And then again, here's your book, Origin of the White Wind.
I know. I wish he was more like photogenic because he's so beautiful. When you have a book, it's just like he is just so gorgeous in person.
I love
He's
the
beautiful.
book.
And
The
wait till you
artwork
see
on the book really is pretty.
Wait till you see the artwork for the second one. It's the same artist, and oh, she did a beautiful
Awesome.
job.
Beautiful.
Beautiful
Okay.
job.
We're going to wrap things up. Again, this is Pages Promotions. You can find us at pagespromotions.com. You can find us on Facebook. The Facebook group page is 2020 Virtual Book Festival. Check us out there. And come on back for the rest of the month. We're doing these nearly every day. I think there's only like 2 days where we're not doing this. But bring your friends and come on back again. And come armed with questions. Thank you, everybody, for coming in, and I appreciate your time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.